Hello, everybody. Hopefully, get to see some of you guys. Don't be like my students and turn off all your videos, please, because I want to see part of your stories too. Welcome. Today, I am your hiking guide. We're going to be hiking in the desert a little bit today, and we're going to be constructing some narratives. Got my hat, my Ranger Tom hat. I've got my walking stick. Got my drink, which is invisible. I didn't go with a full canteen. It's just a little too hard to manage in my fake desert. I've got my camera. This is the first camera I ever shot with. Actually, it's not the first one I owned, but I stole it from my mother. But I've also got my digital camera too. So, kind of a metaphor for stuff we're going to be looking at. Okay, so just sort of, yes, I stole it from my mother when I got into a photography program at the High School for the Performing and Visual Arts. It was the best camera in the house, and she gave it up to me and bought a Nikon. So I ended up with the old Canon that's as old as I am, actually, but I still have it. Okay, so let me talk a little bit about what our hike is going to be like today. First of all, I'm going to give you guys some basic ideas of thinking about narrative and how that fits into a whole host of different activities. And I'm going to take you on a little bit of a hike, virtual hike through the desert. And then I'm going to throw you out in the desert and ask you to hike your way back. We have a Google Doc for this session, and we will be splitting up into groups. Abhijit's going to split us up into randomized groups of about anywhere from, depending on how many we end up with, 6 to 10 people. And each one of you guys get to figure out what you, which quest you wish to undertake. And then we'll come back and we'll talk about those. So, but first, let me walk you through some of my crazy ideas, my lunatic ravings. I blame the heat induced. So let's talk about journeys. We've all been on a bit of a journey over the last few months, and one of the things that has very much come to the fore in my mind, it's always sort of been there because I am one of the storytellers in residence. I guess that's kind of a natural fit for me. As well as Paul, the other guy with the hat. Actually, I think he ditched his hat. I can't see you guys anymore, so if you have questions or if the world is on fire, please scream at me until I stop the presentation, because Keynote kind of takes over my screen. So actually, you know what? Let me do one thing here real quick and open up the chat. I don't think that'll work either. All right. Okay. So just be aware that any questions in the chat will be asynchronous, and I'll come back to them as we reach a stopping point. All right. So again, we've all been on a bit of a journey. So today I'm going to take you out into the desert, and we're going to see some sights. We're going to think about some things in terms of how our journeys work, our stories. Stories are journeys. I mean, they're all interconnected. We have stories are mental journeys. And at the same time, if we take physical journeys, which I hope to do again someday, we construct stories around how those work. And so there's a whole host of ways in which, this is a natural human thing, and this is one of our survival mechanisms. We look for patterns. We put those patterns together into coherent stories. And we have a whole host of things. This is not even a complete list, but of potential stories that you could think of. And so stories can be of journeys. Stories are journeys themselves. As we think these things through in our heads and as we go forward through the world, we assemble these things. So let's start at the very basic level. Let's talk about a classroom. Let's talk about a basic level education quest, as I call it, in the pre-COVIDian era. I think a lot of things, as a teacher, one of the things that has become I've become very aware of in the last few months as I've transitioned a lot of my stuff online, is how many little stories that we tell in the classroom without even thinking about them, and how implicit those stories are. I mean, we may have a big story in the form of maybe a syllabus or a set of teaching objectives or whatever those may be, but at the end of the day, we're constantly ducking and weaving within those stories in our classes. And we have what I've dubbed tribute stories. You know, they hopefully are organized and fed into the whole, but you know, these are the little conversations that we have with our students every day in the classroom, but also outside, you know, as we meet them in the hallway and we talk to them and so on and so forth. So what's happened though is as we've gone online, we fractured those stories. You know, we've become disconnected from that weekly lodestone of going into a classroom and talking to our students. I mean, some of us have tried to maintain synchronous sessions, and initially I tried to replace a lot of the stuff I was doing in my classroom synchronously online with video conferencing. But even though I don't really lecture, I've never really lectured much in class, or not in a while, my structure of my class doesn't necessarily fit that anyway. Even trying to talk through things Socratically with the students was extremely difficult. And so a lot of these conversations, you know, fell by the wayside. And even though I've been working on this for years, it really caused me to step back and regroup and think about how those stories all fit together in a very explicit way. I have a thing called Hames's Law, which is when you put something online, it immediately becomes visible in all of its cracks and problems. You know, there's no hiding bad design, whatever that may be, once you put it online and give people a chance to pick at it, to look at it, and so on and so forth. So let's talk about, you know, taking all those things apart and think about how, you know, a narrative actually works. And so for this purpose, I'm going to look at The Lord of the Rings. And, you know, because it's definitely a quest story, although that quest kind of shifts over time. But if you think about it from the perspective of the main protagonist, let's just think about Frodo for a moment as he's going through his trials and tribulations. And, you know, there's two kinds of things that tend to happen to him as he goes through his story. First of all, there are waypoints. You know, Gandalf shows up and says, hey, you need to hit the road, and explains to him the nature of the ring and so on and so forth. And then there's a waypoint when he hits Rivendell and talks to Elrond, and Elrond, you know, the fellowship is formed and they move forward. And then there's a waypoint where they go into Lothlorien and they're talking to Galadriel. And again, those are all waypoints. Those are points where you're checking in with the source, and it's he or she is giving you direction moving forward. Then there are the framing challenges that sort of channel the story forward. On the you know, things like encounters with orcs, or the monster in the deep outside of Moria, or Saruman. You know, all of these things tend to channel the stories, and of course Sauron, channel the story in certain ways. They provide the outside bumpers, the boundaries of that story that keep you on the road. They're the guardrails in the sense, and they may be challenges to overcome, but they also shift and channel that story in certain directions. So the first thing we have to ask ourselves is, what's the quest that we're actually after here? I mean, what exactly is the goal that we're trying to achieve with our process, our narrative story, our class, our project, our degree path, et cetera, et cetera? And I think a lot of us like to think of this in terms of intrinsic quests, in terms of, I want to make myself a better human being by learning things. A lot of us are in education for that very reason, because that's, you know, that's the intrinsic quest that, you know, motivates us, and that really drives people in a very deep and profound way. Or it may be in the quest of the next great idea or a solution to a problem. You know, these are all very intrinsic. They may lead to extrinsic rewards, but we're doing them first and foremost for intrinsic reasons. It's a quest for knowledge. The problem is that just because that's our quest as a teacher, as a project leader, or whatever our role may be, that doesn't necessarily mean it's the quest of the people who are doing the reading. Okay, so this is an important distinction, that not everybody's vision of what the quest is going to be the same. The reality is that many of our students are on an extrinsic quest. They're after the carrot on the stick. They're after the grade. Ultimately, the grade leads to the degree, which leads to the job, which leads to the pot of gold at the end of the rainbow. And at the end of the day, you know, as I say at the bottom of the slide, the audience is the author. They're making up the story as they go along. When you read a book, you're making up the story in your head as you go along. Your vision of the Lord of the Rings, for those of you, for both of you that read it before you saw the movies, I'm kidding, you know, is shaped by your imagination, right? In the same way, your vision of what a class is shaped by your expectations. And then at the end, retrospectively, also shaped by your experiences, right? So how can you build around this and to try to motivate intrinsic behavior from an audience that's extrinsically motivated in some cases, or maybe not, but you know, and you can use these same sort of plot elements. My class is built around design. It's built around producing a tangible product at the end of the semester. I teach government. I don't teach, you know, woodworking or architecture or anything like that. I teach government. And so my project is they're building a website to try to figure out how to move forward their challenges that they've developed at the beginning of the semester. They and get to the end of that story. But that tangible quest is at the end of at the top of the mountain. And along the way, I still have those framing challenges, just like in Lord of the Rings, that kind of are the bumpers. They may be the readings, which are the yellow book-like things. They may be the instructions and how to do things in the class, which is the blue book. They may be the comments and feedback that they're getting either from me or from their peers that kind of challenge their repeating projects through the semester. They write blogs. They translate those blogs on the website. And then in addition, I've built in waypoints, which are synchronous moments where I have conversations with the students, where I answer questions, where I give them feedback on work that they've already done, where I kind of show them the way forward in the same way that Gandalf and Elrond are showing the way forward to their ultimate quest. And in this way, I kind of help, you know, I've got the bumpers on the edge that channel the quest. At the same time, I'm also sort of moving the quest forward with these waypoints, as I call them. Okay, so any story can be broken down in this way in terms of how we, you know, interact with our students, how we transition to a digital future, how, you know, we teach faculty how to do that, how do we produce a tangible product at some, you know, maybe a website or a learning management system transition or things like that. Those are all stories and narratives in much the same way that a class is. How do we rethink the university? Again, that's a story and a narrative. You know, what's our tangible quest there? So now it's your turn. Abhijit is going to break you guys out into groups. And let me pull out of this momentarily. Looks like we've got 27. So yeah, Abhijit, if you already broken out groups of say 7, 8, that's probably about right. So 4 groups. Is that
Yeah, I have 1, 2, 3, 4. Yeah, 4 groups. I have 4 groups.
Excellent. Okay. So I wasn't sure how many people were going to make it today. There is a link to the document at the very top of the chat, but I will repeat it again. So I wasn't sure how many people were going to make it today, but I wanted to, you know, make sure I had enough groups if we had a lot of people. But now that we have a somewhat smaller group of, you know, under 50, we can choose ourselves which of these quests that we wish to undertake. So as I said, Abhijit's going to split you guys up into groups. Each group should pick a challenge and put your names down under the members. Be nice, don't delete anybody else's stuff, and answer the questions. And then we're going to do that for 20 minutes. Talk amongst yourselves, and then when we come back, we'll do a debrief. So any questions? I think everything's fairly self-explanatory. I'll be sort of floating through the groups I have to figure out how to do that, but I'll be making sure you guys don't get lost in the desert without any water. Part of my responsibility is not to kill any campers. I was told very clearly, don't kill the campers. All right. Go ahead and set off the groups, Abhijit.
Yeah, sure.
So this is the part where we give Karina a workout, because one of her tasks is going to be helping us document some of these epic quests that have been laid out by our astute groups, and then I'll have a few closing words at the end. Let's see, how do we want to do this? Let me share screen and look at the document. And I know different people approach this in different ways. Let me make sure I can see the chat window here. Oh, wow, okay. With Paul and Ruben to guide you through the desert, I can only imagine how frightening that journey might have been. The good news is Brian didn't make it, so you didn't encounter too many frightening creatures along the way. Okay, so, all right, so group number one, we'll just do this in the interest of motoring through it. So how much more time do we have again? 10 minutes?
Yeah, we have around 8 minutes.
Uh-oh. All right. I knew this was going to take longer than we wanted to. This is, by the way, a living document. You will still have access to this. And I have put some of my closing stuff at the bottom of the document under the title of what is the airspeed velocity of an unladen swallow. So if I don't get to it, then the kind of the last couple slides. Right, African or European. Okay, so what is your quest? So history, why is history relevant to solving current problems? Yeah, students may perceive the quest as mandatory and not personally relevant. Exactly. So, and I know doing this in 20 minutes, some of these things in my class, I've spent years trying to figure out some of these framing challenges and bumpers. The main thing is I want you guys to recognize the reality of their existence and how they will affect potentially your own planning, strategic, being ready for Rubens' black swans, whatever you want to call it. So, okay, so something to steer the students. Okay. You know, some other things to think about as you think about framing challenges, think of them in terms of skills a lot of times, or you know, building quests around not necessarily knowledge, but in terms of skills. And so what kind of skills, you know, historiography skills, knowing that history is written by certain people and not written by others, or that you have to dig deeper to get at certain kinds of history. I think that's been a real strong lesson over the last month, is that, you know, not everybody shares the same vision of American history, or statues for that matter, and how that points. So solve a current issue using historical perspective, structure. Okay, those are great. The other thing I would say with waypoints is, you know, this is an opportunity to, where synchronous interaction may be very decisive. Most of my waypoints are synchronous because it involves a conversation, right? So what did you mean when you connected this current event to the perspective, right? Give students lots of choices of tools to use. Yeah, I mean, you need to be very mindful about how those tools, what those tools do, because the tools themselves affect, you know, if you've got a boat and you need to cross a mountain, you know, that's not necessarily the best tool for the job, right? And if you've got a river and somebody hands you a spear, you know, not necessarily going to be the best thing. So think very mindfully about how those tools apply to those things. That's one of the things we're working on with the teaching tool set triangle, as a matter of fact. So some of the generalized tools. Ruben's always going to throw me those curveballs. I'm going to ignore that, Ruben, given the amount of time we have left. Okay, so preparing faculty for COVID fall. Foster faculty wellness. Yes, lots of dragons is what, again, that's the key thing of the perception stuff, is that these things are often perceived differently than you intend them to be, right? So there's some good, yes, I know. There's some really good suggestions here. This group obviously spent their time in the wilderness well. Okay, who found the image? Take credit. Perfect, right? Yes, great tools. One of the key things there, one of your key challenges as a storyteller is that communication aspect. I mean, a lot of times we take that for granted and it doesn't necessarily happen. Those waypoints are really important to have as touchstones, whether we're talking with faculty. I should have known. Whether we're talking with faculty or whether we're talking with students, having two-way communication to where listening is every bit as important as talking is very critical to a lot of good storytelling. Remember, the audience is ultimately the author. So yes, making sure everyone is aligned. Let's see, this one is re-envision a master of liberal studies. Okay. Critical thinking and problem solving skills. Excellent. Okay. Tension is a waypoint. Okay. All right. So I challenge you to think about how you can use that to your advantage in terms of group discussions. Excellent. Some really good ones. I'm glad you guys reinvented that. And then please, I encourage you guys to look at other people's stuff. We don't have enough time to give these justice at this point. And you, as I said, I'm not going to turn this off so you can come back and look at it. Hun, what are we talking about? Biology. What does Hun mean? As a half Hun, I'd like to know.
Huh? I don't know how to spell.
Oh, okay. I thought you were making a derogatory comment about Germans. That's all.
No. I was trying to get, because so many of my students just look at me like, "What planet are you on?" And they're like, "Oh,
right.
That's hard."
So one good way in which to understand perceptions, and yes, we remember, always pillage before you burn. One good way is to understand perceptions is to have the students journal their experiences as they go through. And the other thing is you can use that. Every class I ever teach is a design project as the class itself, because I'm constantly redesigning for the future. So, sorry, did somebody say something? I didn't mean to cut anybody off there.
I just said journaling is a very good idea.
Yes. So, I mean, there are many ways you can do this, but the more you can learn in the open, the better. Let me go back to my presentation here. I've got exactly 1 minute to do 2 slides. So I did feel I needed to get to my punchline here. So think about all of your struggles, the struggles of your students, whether you're a teacher, whether you're mapping out instructional paths, whether you're trying to plan for the future, trying to prepare for black swans. Think of those as stories. Think about what your quest is. Try to get a very realistic and real and focused idea of what that is. And then also think about ways in which you can facilitate that quest on the edge. Yeah, learning Hun, man, that's awful. Okay. So my encouragement to you guys is, think about all these stories, and they're wonderful stories. These stories happen in our minds. You can have them in locked up in your house, or you can have them out wandering the desert in New Mexico, like this story. Pick up your stick, draw a map, find your traveling party, marvel at the wonders. So all of this connects into a much larger project. This diagram is on a larger set of projects. And this is kind of the baseline for it. What's the basic quest, right, that we're all after. and how do these things interconnect? This is at the bottom underneath the unladen swallow comment. This is at the bottom of the at the bottom of the Google Doc. So you can look this up yourself. There's a number of links and articles and things in there as well. Feel free to reach out if you've got questions. I am Tom at ideaspaces.net, which is, feel free to drop me a note or any of the other ways in which you like to communicate. And on Twitter, I'm at ideaspacesnet. Okay, any last minute questions? I think we're out of time here. We're going to get booted out of the room.
You got 4 minutes, Tom.
Oh, I got 4 minutes. Oh, geez. Okay. All right. So any questions? Everybody ready to go do some adventuring?
Yeah.
One of these days, I will get back out to the desert with my camera.
I do
Yes.
have a question.
Yes.
If you were filling out the form, what seemed to work best for you as far as the framework and things like that?
Well, it depends on the challenge, of course, right? My class was the model for the waypoints and discussions that were there, right? So there's a set of strategies. I don't think there's one way to do it. It's a toolbox, right? And so that first document that's on the overcoming Oz at the very beginning, or at the very beginning of the end of the document, the last part here. Hold on, right here. Or conquering Oz. Sorry, I can't even remember my own stuff. I kind of laid this out in all of its different pieces here. So all of these things are these stories change when we go digital. And so let your imagination recreate it in a way, that you could only do in the past in your imagination as you were reading a book, right? So, think about the first time you read Lord of the Rings, or the first time you read your favorite adventure, whatever those may be, and how your brain worked as you were going through the stories, right? And how anything seemed possible. And digital gives us that ability. It gives us the ability to shift the possible. And I think a lot of times what we've been seeing in response to the crisis is people retreating rather than advancing. And I think that's sad, because I think there's a lot of opportunity for some beautiful stories and adventures to be told, but not if we all run back to the Shire and hide in our hobbit holes, right? So I don't know if that answered your question. The answer is, it really depends on what the quest is. Defining the quest, understanding what your party is going through, what the people you're bringing on the quest with you are going through, understanding the tools that you have at your disposal to overcome challenges and move through the quest, understanding how to keep the quest on track, and understanding how to keep the quest moving forward. So in my class, everything from doing the readings, following the instructions, getting feedback, bumpers, those are those feedback loops. And then the waypoints are, again, the waypoints can be both feedback and bumpers. They're ways of readjusting the direction, but they're also how you propel the conversation forward at the same time. So
Tom, two quick questions. Can you get Karina's drawing up on the screen? And while we're doing that, could you sing from memory the Learning Human theme song for us?
I'm a visual person, not a, well, no.
Take a photo of the song and show it to us.
Abhijit, can you spotlight or pin my video,
Yeah, can you make her the speaker?
please?
Yeah,
And thank
can
you.
you?
Or individually, if you hover your mouse over my tile, click on the 3 blue dots and click pin video. Oh, I can spotlight myself. Hot damn. Okay, here we go. There you are.
Yeah, you should go to speaker view. You should be able to see it.
That's a beautiful
See, I
piece.
finally, after years and years, have gotten some Karina artwork. I mean, I can't tell you how gratifying it is to finally see my thoughts expressed in those ways, or your thoughts expressed.
Make her autograph it, Tom. Make her autograph and send you the original.
Okay.
He can't have my iPad.
That's what I was hoping for. He needs a new one.
Thanks,
Actually,
everybody.
I
If
do.
there's any final thoughts you want to make sure they're up there, other than Aragorn?
Any other questions?
Thanks
Great work. Yes. Okay, everybody. I guess then please feel free to find me out in the digital world as I'm venturing my way through the desert. And stay hydrated. And gets pretty hot this time of year. Thanks, everyone.